Major funding for these programs is provided by HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, Greenberg Traurig LP, the Moynihan Group. Additional funding is provided by Antares Real Estate, Arbor Realty Trust, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Habitats, Cushman & Wakefield, Essex Capital Partners, Fremont Investment and Loan, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Must Development LLC, Newmark Knight Frank, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal & Rosenthal Inc., Signature Bank, Stonehenge Partners, Swig Equities, the Engel Berman Group, the Wickoff Group, Titan Capital, YL Real Estate Developers.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller, the host of the Stoller Report, Real Estate Trends in the Tri-State Region. Everybody I know lives, works, and operates in New York City. People have to live somewhere. Where are they living? They're living in the Bronx, they're living in Brooklyn, they're living in Staten Island. They're living all over. Many of them, and most people I know, are renting their apartments. And where do they rent apartments, and who do they rent these apartments from? Today I have these 800-pound gorillas, the guys who own collectively over 26,000 apartments in New York. They're owners, they're operators, and they're real gentlemen in the business. My guests today include Rob Rosani, CEO of Stella Management, Joe Zuber, Chief Investment Officer of the City Investment Fund, and Andrew Goldberg, Principal at SG2 Properties. So Rob, you own 13,000 units. Joe, you own 8,000. You own 5,500. You just sold some. It's like a trading business. Do you guys want to own these apartments, or do you want to convert them? Are you planning to? Are you going to force everybody into condomania? What do you do? I mean, what do you do with your apartments? You've been in the business. You're like the gorilla. You've been around for 20 years. You and your partner. So tell me.
First of all, we are a rental landlord. We buy properties to rent long term, okay? We believe in the long-term viability of rental properties in New York City. We're not typically condo converters. We don't typically get into a transaction in order to convert the property or the individual apartments to condominiums, because we believe in the long-term viability of rentals in New York City. So we're really not in that business. There are, of course, others in that business. But we believe in being a rental landlord and recognizing that we're, in fact, landlords to 12, 13,000 families, and this is their homes. And what we try to do is keep that mindset. So we don't think of our residents as tenants, we think of them as residents, right? So what we try to do is make their home as good as we can afford to make it, because the better we make their home, the more, in theory, they'll be willing to pay us, everything else being equal. So we're really not in the condo conversion business. We're in the rental business, and we're in the rental business long term.
Joe?
We have a similar strategy. The majority of the units that we own are what I would deem workforce housing for your blue-collar workers in and around New York City. And it's similar to, as Rob had said, it's sort of a two-way contract. If you provide people a place of dignity, they'll live with dignity. And so we have been a large investor in apartments. We hold them for the medium term. We are sort of a closed-end fund vehicle. So we're sort of a 5 to 7 year holder of these assets. We think that on a risk-adjusted basis, they're a very good investment for our investors. You're rewarded for, as Rob has said, investing capital back into these properties. So to take some of our housing stock that's sort of fallen on bad times, invest capital into it, is just a tremendous return on that invested capital, and you provide a better place for your residents to live.
Andrew?
Very similar strategy. We buy with the intention to own rental housing. to give people a better place to live. Most of the time, what we're buying are properties that have been neglected by previous owners for many years. A lot of times it's been the same owner for 20, 30, 40 years now, and a lot of money hasn't gone into those properties. So we go in, we want to provide better housing and just give a better investment or a better asset class to
But
the areas where
needless to
we're buying.
say, all three of you, including myself, I'm a capitalist. You buy these apartments, and you want to make money on them, and you want to give the workforce housing. You want to do this. How can you make a good profit on these units and provide that good housing to the individuals?
Well, remember what he said a minute ago, which is it's a two-way contract, okay? So when we go into a property and we take a look at it and it's got a lobby from the 1960s and a,
1960s? How about 1920s?
Okay, I'm
You're
just
being nice.
giving you an example. A lobby from the 1960s. It's got finishes from the 1940s. It's got a street side elevation from the 19-teens. Whatever it is, okay. What we try to do is say, hey, if we were going to live there, what would we want, right? So it's a two-way contract. If I build something that is greater than what the market will bear, they're only going to pay me what the market will bear. If I build something that is less than the market will bear, they're only going to pay me what it's worth in the condition that I have put it in, okay? So it's really, and you said it best, it's a two-way contract.
Right, but someone said to me recently, we were talking about, people cannot live south of 96th Street. So they moved north of 96th Street. And, people are in Astoria, people are in Queens and other sections, people are Roosevelt Island, all of this. But people are being priced out of Midtown Manhattan or the central part of Manhattan. Are people being priced out of the rest of Manhattan? Are they being priced out of the Bronx? I mean, because, how much are these people paying? The rule of thumb used to be 30% of your income should be used for housing. That's not happening. My viewers, many of them are paying 50% of their income. How do they stay in New York City?
Well, I think a lot of our residents are two working people, and so they're families that are trying to make a better life for their kids. So they may hold down, even more than one job. What we have found is in the Bronx and some of the outer boroughs, the key, your earlier question, how do you make money at this, is I think first one, the capital markets have been very attracted to this asset class. So there's the ability to use debt financing upwards of 80%, and some people will use more than that on reasonably cheap levels. I think the second way that you make money is that average rents in the Bronx for a one-bedroom apartment are probably $1,000 a month for a renovated apartment. And so if you can buy in good locations and neighborhoods where your average rents are a reasonable discount to that, 20, 30%, the ability as you turn over apartments, renovate those apartments, and move to market, that loss to lease of 20 to 30%, is meaningful to the rent roll that you've bought them on. And so that's been sort of the key to our strategy.
But you just brought up the capital markets. The capital markets are, we were talking prior to the show, is a dysfunction happening in the capital markets. People are worried about getting 10-year money. There's difficulties. A lot of the investment bankers are having to hold paper on their books. What effect is this capital markets going to have on guys like you who, you just bought a portfolio close to $1 billion. You bought a portfolio for $300 million. You constantly buy portfolios. What effect is that going to have on your ability to buy and to finance?
I think, Michael, in direct answer to the question, short term there are always things that affect your ability to buy. But I think what we're talking about, we're more long-term investors. We're not interested in buying this and selling it in a year for a big profit, okay? What we're interested in doing is buying and genuinely increasing the fundamental value of what we own, okay? Through improving the real estate, frankly, and improving the rents that we get as a result of improving the real estate. That's it. There will naturally be momentary forces that affect or impact individuals' decision-making processes. But long term, this is New York City rental housing stock. The majority of the stuff that we buy, people use the old expression, you're buying below replacement cost. How about when you're buying below land cost? Okay? That's a much different set of circumstances, okay? And many of these properties that we've bought, you're buying at less than the cost of the land that it would sell for unencumbered. So this is rental stock that's never going away in New York City. And, candidly, new competition can't come online for the type of workforce, like you said, housing, that we own predominantly, okay? So all we're doing is taking that workforce housing and giving the workforce better housing.
Right, and as I was saying before the show, on my site inspection that I took a number of months ago, and I saw some people who own properties for the last 10 years, and basically I felt it was criminal the way they were operating it. And now part of the reason that we've said is maybe it was because they didn't have the money to fix it up, or maybe they just couldn't care about fixing it up. But one thing that I did see, in every apartment that I visited, when somebody would open that door and let me in as the banker or whatever it is, these people in the workforce housing were so proud of their apartments. I have never seen people more proud of their apartments and wanting to show their apartments.
Absolutely.
Isn't that
We go into apartments all the time. They're beautiful old pre-war apartments with parquet floors.
But I think, Andrew, it's even more than that. I think Joe understands what there is a pride of renting.
Good people
These
keep good homes.
people are so proud, and there's such a pride. And, some of them would show me the old parquet floors of 85 years and how clean it was. And I don't want to age myself. Some of them you would see these ice boxes. I mean, if you go, especially up in the Bronx, you would see they didn't have refrigerator. Ice boxes.
But the opposite is also true, Michael. You can go into some buildings, and many of these people that are in the outer boroughs or Washington Heights are, multilingual. And if you go in with multilingual people and you start talking to them, they'll show you that the landlord never did this, he never did that, he never did this, he left that alone, he left that alone. And so the opposite is also true, right? And what we like to do, all three of us, is buy properties when the people are saying they didn't do any of these things, and I'd love for these things to be done, so that in theory, although a different person because of rent regulation, they're willing to pay more rent.
Now, when you're buying units, when you're buying apartments, you've acquired a lot in the Bronx. You've acquired Upper Manhattan. You've acquired all over, and you own a lot of places. Where do you like to buy today? What's your sweet spot? What if the opportunity came about? Where would you want to buy more rental apartments? What section of the 5 boroughs?
We'll buy anywhere. I think what's key to us in some of the outer boroughs is to see home ownership in the neighborhood, because that gets back to the sort of the pride and the dignity that you mentioned, Michael, is that if you've got people in the neighborhood that own their own homes, they're much more apt to take care of it and care about the neighborhood. And those, to us, are defensible neighborhoods that are on the way up. And if you then invest capital in them, you're going to reap rewards from that.
I wouldn't say that we like to buy in one neighborhood or not, because we are Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island. We're landlords in the 5 boroughs. What I would say is we like to buy location, and in a perfect world, I mean, the old real estate adage, I like to buy the worst home on the best block, okay? So we've bought some very large properties that were frankly undermanaged and underutilized, and nobody spent money on them, and otherwise in a location, not only in Manhattan, but, or I should say in the 5 boroughs, but outside in other big markets in America. And we've bought essentially the worst thing in the great location, and as you make that worst thing better, then the location surrounding it obviously becomes better. So,
relating to that, a couple of weeks ago, I did a show on the Rockaways in Auburn, which for 50 years has been dilapidated. the home ownership, bombed out. The Bronx for many years, the burnouts, the fires, and all this. Do you see certain, and I think what Joe just said, with home ownership, do you see some of these neighborhoods coming back? I mean, the Bronx definitely, we were talking before, is coming back.
Sure.
What about Queens? What about the Rockaways?
I think they have a way to come, but I think with you are seeing home ownership in Arvern by the Sea. There are a couple of companies, the Lee Company, and I think Beechwood is building there, and the new RFP that was issued. So I think it'll take time. It'll just take a lot of time. But
the buildings that you own, all of you, they could be as old as, let's say, 80, 90 years, and they can be as new as 20 in average. People, in your roles, in your lives, why can't we build more affordable housing in New York?
the land, cost of the land.
Cost of the land, cost of the commodities to build it. It's not a unwillingness to build on the part of developers, which is often a political tack that is taken against developers. It's what the costs are.
But how, we have 8 million people, we're going to have 9 million people coming to New York who live in the city. We don't have, we have rental housing, but we're not increasing the stock to the level. The mayor is doing a great job, but we're not really increasing the stock enough to handle this. How do we take care of this problem? This is a crisis.
You need greater densities. I think zoning's got to allow for greater densities in some in areas whether you're on the avenues or in some of these emerging, like Arvern, where we do have land at a
But
basis.
Arvern, they're limiting. The density in Arvern is, they're limiting the height.
Right.
And they're making 3 families. Okay?
I think it's more than just that, though. Forgetting about the densities, it's big picture government assistance, right? This affordable housing traditionally has been built with government assistance, whether it was Mitchell-Lama's done, 30, 40 years ago, obviously, and what is otherwise a public-private joint venture. At the end of the day, it's the government's willingness to write a check. How willing are they? Okay? So, for example, if you want to buy land in Midtown and you want to build a residential building, I say Midtown, south of 96th Street residential, you could pay $400 a foot for the land. If you pay $500 or $600 a foot to build the building and you're all in for over $1,000, you can't afford to rent it affordable. It won't make money, so no one will give you the money to build it.
The spreads are too great between what fair market luxury housing, quote unquote, would get versus what affordable housing justifies.
But I don't even think it's so much that. I think it's that in order to induce you to build affordable housing, there must be, look, at the end of the day, it can be a not-for-profit. You just can't lose money. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. So if affordable housing, if there's such a great willingness to build affordable housing, and that's a otherwise civic, responsibility that the government has, which I think everybody here would agree it is, mm-hmm. then the government needs to figure out what incentives it's going to do or going to give, whether it's real estate taxes or tax credits or whatever it's going to do, in order to incentivize the landlords to do it.
When we had the crisis and the terrible time in 9/11, the government did the incentives in Lower Manhattan. Mm-hmm. There's rental housing that was built, and it was built because there was tax-exempt bonds, there was tax exemption, okay? There were all these
but
situations.
Plenty of that went to office buildings, too, though.
But also $5 million, $1 billion went to rental apartments. It did go to that. Now, you're building a new building.
Right.
Okay? Tell us about that building. You're building rental housing. You're building north of 96th Street, right?
I'm building fair market rental housing, but I have the luxury, or the partnership has the luxury, of owning the land basically for free. Okay? So, excuse me, I don't have the burden of going out and paying a market price, okay, and buying the land, and let's say the land is worth $500 a foot, to pick an example, okay? Not only do I have a burden of paying for the land at $500 a foot, but then I have the carry on that land while I build the building, okay? So $500 is more like $600, right? Because I got to carry the land for 2.5 years.
Rob, I understand.
I don't have to do that because I own it essentially without any money in it.
Right, and aren't you doing something maybe up in north of 96th Street also?
Mm-hmm. But we're building condos,
You're gonna build
on
condos.
110th Street.
No, but I know the 110th Street. That's a separate. That's really. It's not north of 90. Even though it's 110th Street, it's on the park.
That's right.
Clearly.
Right. So that's a different type of neighborhood. I mean, do you see yourselves? I mean, maybe one day changing the focus of SG?
No, we're really owners of rental housing. We're not. We've looked at doing in some building we own, on the west side in the 70s, a condo conversion. But we realize that we like to own rental housing, and that's what we want.
We've tried for 3 years to find land where we could build rental to make it pencil, even to a 5 or 6 going in return, and we haven't been able to do it. The only way that we've been able to play in really the rental sphere, if you will, is by buying rent-stabilized apartments.
Right.
But speaking about that, I think it was about 3-4 weeks ago, this company out of London, an investment management company, Dorney, came into the market and they bought a large $200 million
Kessner portfolio.
Kessner portfolio. And, then there's Lev Levaya from Israel who's coming in, and as I wrote about 4 weeks ago in The Sun and the Times copied me today, with the Irish coming in, you have a lot of foreign. So how do you compete when you're trying to buy? You bought your deal, you bought your deal. How many, there's a lot of competition over there to buy because they all want this type of asset.
Look, what I would say is you're going to win sometimes and you're going to lose most of the time. It's that simple.
You're going to lose?
Let's be...
Could you believe this?
Let's be honest, okay? There are instances when you have, certain advantages that you can use because you know the asset better, you know the market better, you know the neighborhood better, you know how much it's going to cost to build, fix up the building better. You have a better capital structure. And then there are times when you're not.
Okay, but would you say, here's an entity from the United Kingdom, First Purchase. They didn't buy buildings with elevators. They bought walk-up apartment buildings without a partner, like an operating partner like you or an operating partner that you deal with. Mm-hmm. Here are guys
why
who
did
just...
they do it, though?
Why?
Because
tell me why
it's irreplaceable rental stock in the most important city in the world. That's it. That's the entire analysis.
And you overlay that with that the dollar is so cheap today, and therefore they're playing a repatriation currency game as well.
Clearly
buy it cheap today, the dollar recovers against the euro, then I've outperformed.
And the pound in their instance,
Right,
which is
right.
even wider.
Right.
Sure.
And the returns are better on that than other rental housing that's in play right now south of 96th Street, which is the other things that these out of the country funds are looking at.
Certain people, and I don't know if you're in there, one time, even worse than the Bronx was something we'd call East New York. Nobody wanted to go to East New York and Brooklyn. Are you seeing, and my company with Taconic bought an investment over there. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing people like yourselves wanting to go into that certain sections of Brooklyn, which the people didn't want to go in before?
We looked at that same property, and as I told my dear friend Richard, that was the life's too short rule.
Why was it life?
It's just too much to do and too much to go.
The biggest purchase of rental apartments took place last year. And I had foreseen this, I hate to say, 2 years before I wrote in an article that I knew Stuyvesant Town was going to be sold. What do you think of that acquisition? Because that still has some comments all the time. Any thoughts about that? I'll let Joe talk before I get Rob to
I think it's irreplaceable. We'd all love to own it. Somebody's going to wake up. They're going to wake up in 10 years, and that's going to be worth double what they paid for it. I think whatever price they paid, it's going to be a good deal.
But my question is, when it was built after the war, It was built, like yours on 97th Street. It was built with land, additional land, because you had parks, and it was a community. It was a planned community, and not truly a planned community, but in those days,
MetLife planned
it was a
community.
MetLife planned community.
Those returning servicemen.
Right.
For the servicemen. Do you see one day Tishman Speyer, or whoever else will be the future owner of this, maybe they'll have it for a long time, do you see someone building on the property? Do you see more housing like you're doing up on your property?
I think that at that property, because we bought Park West Village, as you articulated, and we knew there was undeveloped land, the benefit that Park West Village had was that undeveloped land was literally on the avenue. Okay, so it's on each side of Columbus from 97th to 100th. It's unobstructed. There's nothing there currently. I haven't, sat down with master planners at SOM, as it were, on Peter Stuyvesant, but I think the main challenge they have there is the site is predominantly well built out, and there are a lot of rent-regulated residents in those buildings. And I think that it will need to go through a couple more incantations before they're in a place where they can, with a fairly liberal hand, take down buildings and build greater. Now, let's assume that makes sense economically, okay? Because if they get to that point and it doesn't make sense economically, they won't be able to do it. But I think that someday it will look different than it does today. I just don't think that that'll be in the near term.
After the war, MetLife built a number of these. They built Parkchester. They built something that you own today.
Correct.
Were they cookie cutter? Two. Okay. Do you see these cookie cutter MetLife after war places changing? I mean, besides the fact that you are renovating the units which are 60 years age, do you see the changing over there?
I think they're
can't get rid of the bricks.
I think they're definitely changing fundamentally because, obviously, Jerry can't buy that asset and not afford to come in there and renovate units. He has to, okay? So as people come in and buy these properties and they renovate apartments, they're naturally going to get people paying much higher rents. So that's going to change, the fundamental feel.
So it seems to me, and it seems, because I'm in the business, we're all in the business, it seems that even though people think there's a lot of condomania, there's always going to be residential rental apartments in the five boroughs.
No question.
And people like you and other people in this industry are going to be there and to maintain and do some good work to keep these properties like that.
No question.
And I'm really happy that I've been able to provide my viewers a little feeling of what's happening with the residential rental market. I'd like to thank Rob Rosani, CEO of Stellar Management, Joe Zuper, Chief Investment Officer of the City Investment Fund, and last but definitely not least, I think his name is Andrew Goldberg, partner at SG2 Properties. Next week, we're going to talk to a group of really young residential developers who's going to tell us what they're building around the city of New York. See you next week. Thank you.
Major funding for these programs is provided by HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, Greenberg Traurig LP, the Moynihan Group. Additional funding is provided by Antares Real Estate, Arbor Realty Trust, CB Richard Ellis, City Habitats, Cushman & Wakefield, Essex Capital Partners, Fremont Investment and Loan, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Must Development LLC, Newmark Knight Frank, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal & Rosenthal Inc., Signature Bank, Stonehenge Partners, Swig Equities, the Engel Berman Group, the Witkoff Group, Titan Capital, YL Real Estate Developers.